Hey, I'm Linda. Thanks for joining me this morning. In our quiet suburban neighborhood, my days always start the same. I make breakfast for my son, Dany, before he heads off to school. My husband, Tom, is usually already on the phone by then, laughing too loudly at whatever crisis his sister, Rachel, is having. This particular morning, the sun hadn't even fully risen yet, but there was Tom, coffee in one hand, phone in the other. Rachel was ranting about her car breaking down again and how she needed help with that, plus more money for her boys' never-ending activities. I've got your back, Ra. Let me see what I can do, Tom said, eager to please. I glanced at Dany, sitting quietly, eating his cereal as if he was trying to make himself invisible. It broke my heart to see him like that. When Tom finally hung up, I tried once more to bring up something that had been weighing on me. Dany's been really interested in that summer coding camp. It would be great if we could look into it for him. Tom barely looked up from his phone, scrolling through his messages. Yeah, but you know how tight things are right now, with my mom needing help and Rachel's kids needing new laptops for school. I pressed on. But what about Dany? His interests are just as important. Tom sighed, irritated. Linda, we've been over this. My family needs me. Before I could respond, the doorbell rang. It was Tom's mother, Eleanor, sweeping in with her usual air of superiority. She barely glanced at me before turning to Tom. Darling, you won't believe the morning I've had, she began, but I had already tuned out. I focused instead on packing Dany's lunch, feeling the familiar hollow ache in my stomach. This was the same cycle every day. Eleanor and Rachel calling with their emergencies, and Tom rushing to their rescue. As I handed Dany his lunchbox and watched him leave for school, I couldn't help but wonder how much longer I could stand to watch my son be put second to his cousins. That night at dinner, the absence of Dany's future in our family discussions was glaring. Tom talked about how he'd helped Rachel with her car troubles and transferred money to cover his nephew's new laptops. You should have seen how happy they were, Linda. I wish Dany understood the value of family like that, he said, completely missing the irony. My fork paused in midair. Family includes Dany, Tom. When's the last time you did something just for him? Tom frowned, clearly not expecting the challenge. He's fine. He doesn't need constant hand-holding. In that moment, it hit me. My husband's family was his priority. And somehow, Dany and I had become background characters in the drama of their needs. After dinner, Tom retreated to his office, mumbling something about managing funds for his mother. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the uneaten food, the cold clarity of my situation settling in. I was alone in this, but I was determined to change it for Dany and for myself. The next steps wouldn't be easy, but as I cleared the dishes, I knew one thing for sure. I wouldn't let my son be forgotten. Not anymore. Later that evening, I logged into Dany's college fund account, something I always did with a sense of pride. But today my heart sank. The numbers didn't add up. Thousands of dollars were missing. Frantically, I double-checked, hoping I'd made a mistake. No such luck. I confronted Tom. You gave his college fund to Rachel's kids. Babe, they needed it for school. It's a good investment in their future. And what about Dany? His future doesn't count. Come on, it's not like that. He's smart. He'll figure something out. Family helps family. That's just it, isn't it? Tigu, Dany isn't family enough to deserve his own savings. Tom shrugged, feeling my anger. I'm doing my best here. No, you're doing what's easiest. You're avoiding conflict with your mom and sister by sacrificing your own son. The silence that followed was thick and uncomfortable. Tom's avoidance was answer enough. It was up to me now. Dany needed someone in his corner, and that someone was going to be me. A few days later, I found myself sitting in a local coffee shop, chatting with a mom whose son attended the same expensive private school as Rachel's kids. What started as casual talk about school fundraisers quickly turned into a strategic gathering of information. So the school is pretty selective with scholarships, huh? Must be a hefty tuition. Oh, absolutely. It's outrageous. But some people get creative with funding. Creative? How so? She leaned in slightly, lowering her voice. Well, you didn't hear it from me, but there's been talk, she said, lowering her voice. Some parents funnel money through different accounts, even for scholarships. There's a lot of politics involved. Politics. That word echoed in my head. Tom's family helps family suddenly seemed like something much darker, part of a system built on manipulation and secrecy. I thanked her for the chat, my mind racing. That evening, I found myself at the school, posing as a prospective parent interested in scholarships. The admissions director, a sharply dressed woman with a polished smile, was more than willing to explain their prestigious program. How do most families manage the tuition? I asked, trying to sound casual. We offer a variety of scholarships, some based on need, others on merit, and of course, there are private donations. Private donations? I probed. Yes, some of our benefactors are very generous. It allows them to give back and support the community. It's all very discreet, of course. Discreet. There it was again, the secrecy. It was clear there was something beneath the polished surface, a system designed to control through financial dependency. This was about more than money. It was about influence. As I left with brochures, a new sense of purpose filled me. If Tom and his family were part of this game, they weren't just risking Dany's future. They were part of a machine manipulating far more than just college funds. On the drive home, the streetlights blurred as scenarios raced through my mind. How many others were out there, silenced by the weight of financial dependence? How deep did this go? When I arrived home, I found Tom on the couch, flipping through TV channels. He glanced at me, his gaze hollow. "Find out what you needed?" he asked, barely paying attention. "More than you know, Tom. More than you know." The pieces were starting to fall into place. Tomorrow I put my plan into action, for Dany, for everyone trapped in this web of family first. I wasn't just confronting Tom anymore. I was preparing to expose the rot at the core. The next morning, as the sun crept over the horizon, I was already on my way back to the school. I clutched a folder of carefully prepared questions, all under the guise of exploring scholarships for Dany. But my real mission was to meet with Paula, the financial advisor I'd been introduced to during my previous visit. "Good morning, Paula. Thanks for meeting with me again. I really appreciate it." "My pleasure, Linda. I know how stressful it can be figuring out school funding. What can I help you with today?" "Well," I began. Lowering my voice, I heard from a few parents about the possibility of managing funds creatively here. I was wondering. Paula leaned in slightly, her voice dropping to a whisper. "It's not something we openly discuss, but yes, there are certain avenues we can explore, depending on your needs. I'm interested in scholarships, or maybe something a little more discreet. I'm not sure how it all works." She nodded and pulled a thick folder from her drawer. "Let's see what we can do for you. It's all about finding the right fit for your situation." As she flipped through the documents, I noticed names and figures, a trail of breadcrumbs. So all these contributions go directly to the students. Mostly yes, but in special cases, funds are managed through a third party. It could be a parent or an aunt or uncle, like a trust of sorts. "Exactly," she confirmed. "Bingo. And these trustees, could I see who they are, just for reference?" Paula hesitated, then pulled up a digital ledger on her screen. I scanned it quickly, and there it was, Rachel's name, not her son's, handling significant sums of money. "That's interesting," I murmured, filing the information away. As the meeting wrapped up, Paula mentioned something that made my pulse quicken. "You know, with all the scrutiny these days, we have to be careful. There's talk of an audit coming up, a thorough review of all accounts." "An audit?" I repeated, my heart racing. That sounds serious. It's all routine, of course, but yes, it makes everyone a bit nervous. Understandable. Thanks for the heads up. I left with a smile on my face and my mind buzzing. The next step was clear. That afternoon, I paid a casual visit to Eleanor's house. Tom's mother loved to brag about her children's supposed generosity, and today was no different. "Tom has been such a help to Rachel and the boys," Eleanor gushed. "He's got such a generous heart. Our family always takes care of each other." "I heard the school might be having an audit soon," I said, as innocently as I could. "It's great that everything's so transparent, isn't it?" Eleanor froze, her cup of tea halfway to her lips. "An audit? But why?" "Oh, I'm sure it's just routine. Audits are good for peace of mind, making sure every dollar goes where it's supposed to." I could see the worry creep into her expression, the seed of doubt firmly planted. "Well, yes. I suppose I'll mention it to Rachel. Probably for the best." As I left Eleanor's house, I could feel my plan coming together. The mention of an audit would spread through Tom's family like wildfire, and with Rachel and Tom's shady financial dealings, Panic was inevitable. The next morning, I was in the kitchen when the phone rang. The caller ID showed the school's number. My heart skipped a beat. "Good morning, this is Paula from the school. We've started a preliminary review of our accounts, and while it seems there might have been some irregularities." "Really? That sounds concerning," I said, feigning surprise. "Yes, we've received a few anonymous tips. We're looking into everything very thoroughly." "That must be a huge hassle." "It is, but it's necessary. We take the integrity of our funding very seriously." I could almost hear the sweat forming on her brow through the phone. The trap was set, and now I just had to wait for it to spring. Hours later, as I was watering the plants, Tom burst through the door, his face flushed with a mix of anger and confusion. Eleanor followed closely behind, wringing her hands, her usual composure replaced by an unmistakable worry. "Linda, what have you done?" Tom roared, slamming the door behind him. "Me? What are you talking about?" "They're auditing the school. They're asking about the money I sent for Rachel's boys," Eleanor interjected, her voice cracking under the strain. "Money you never should have sent," I replied, keeping my voice calm. "You've embarrassed us all. If this gets out..." "Our reputation," Eleanor began, but I cut her off. "Your reputation was built on lies, Eleanor. You stole from your own son." "I was helping my family," Tom protested, his voice defensive but faltering. "At what cost, Tom? Who's your family, really?" He couldn't answer. His silence was a deafening admission of guilt. That evening, the fallout was palpable. Word spread quickly, as it always does in tight-knit communities. Neighbors whispered, their eyes darting toward our house, filled with a mixture of pity and judgment. The phone rang again. It was Rachel this time, her voice frantic. "Tom, what have you done? They're asking about the scholarships, the money." "It was for you and the kids, Rachel," Tom stammered, desperation creeping in. "I did it all for you." "You've put us all at risk," she snapped. The blame game began, phone calls flying back and forth, accusations ping-ponging between family members as the whole unit began to crumble under the weight of deceit. In the eye of the storm, I sat quietly. The fury I once felt was replaced by a cold, steady resolve. This was necessary. This was justice. By the time the next community meeting rolled around, the whispers had turned into full-fledged shunning. As Eleanor, Rachel, and Tom walked into the room, people visibly distanced themselves, moving away, leaving empty spaces around them. The isolation was stark and unmistakable. "See what you've done," Eleanor hissed at Tom, her voice venomous as they sat down. "I did what I thought was right," Tom muttered, but his voice lacked conviction. "You thought wrong," I said, standing up. The room fell silent. "We trusted you, Tom, but you and your family played us for fools, using your own son's future as collateral. But no more. This community does not tolerate deceit." As I sat back down, I could feel the weight of many eyes upon me. There was a shift in the room, a nod here, a whispered agreement there. The tide was turning. When I returned home, the sky was streaked with the fiery hues of sunset. The hardest part was over. Our once quiet town, uneventful and serene, now buzzed with the aftershocks of a scandal that had exposed the cracks in what was once thought to be a model family. Tom's actions had not only put his job at risk, but also dismantled the pedestal his family had built for themselves. The next day, as I walked into the cafe, I could feel the weight of many glances, this time not of pity but of respect. I sat down with the school principal and a few local benefactors. Their tone had shifted completely. "We've been discussing Dany's situation," the principal began, "and we all agree that a bright young man like him shouldn't suffer for his father's mistakes." "Absolutely," one of the benefactors added. "We're looking into a scholarship to cover his tuition for the coding camp he's interested in." It was a testament to the resilience and compassion of our community. "Thank you," I said, warmth flooding through me. "This means more than I can express." As I left the cafe, I felt lighter than I had in months. Neighbors waved, some stopping to offer their support and help. It was a stark contrast to the isolation now surrounding Tom, Eleanor, and Rachel. At home, I found Dany working on his homework. When I told him the news, his face lit up with the brightest smile I'd seen in a long time. "Really, Mom? That's awesome. I won't let you down." "I know you won't, honey. This is your time to shine." Later that day, I found Tom sitting alone in the park, a shadow of the man who once held his head so high. He didn't notice me at first, But when I approached, he looked up, surprise flashing briefly across his face before it was replaced by resignation. "I just wanted to tell you," I said, "Dany got the scholarship. He's going to that summer camp after all." "That's good. He deserves it," Tom muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. "Tom, it didn't have to be this way." "I know," he sighed. "I just thought I was doing the right thing. I didn't see." "That's just it," I said softly. "You didn't see because you didn't want to. You chose not to see us, your own family." He nodded, the weight of his choices finally settling in. "I guess I have a lot to think about." "Yes, you do." I turned and left him to his thoughts. The road ahead for him would be long and filled with challenges of his own making. But for Dany and me, the future was looking brighter. We had weathered the storm, and with the support of those around us, we were ready to rebuild, stronger and wiser. As I walked back home, the sun set, casting long shadows on the path ahead. The cool evening air carried the promise of new beginnings and the sweet scent of justice, not served by courts, but by the unshakable moral compass of a community that stood up for what was right. For Dany and me, this wasn't just an ending. It was a new beginning, a testament to the strength of a mother's love and the resilience of those who choose to do what's right.